The city's most feared mafia boss found himself unexpectedly embraced by a waitress right before a throng of onlookers. By dawn, a photograph of the incident had exploded across the internet, leading his adversaries to believe she held significant sway over him. His rivals, intent on exploiting her as leverage, now faced his resolute decision. She was under his protection, whether she liked it or not. The Belmont Hotel's ballroom reeked of opulence and desperation. Sophia Castellano, balancing a tray laden with champagne flutes, navigated a labyrinth of women adorned with diamonds and men sporting watches that dwarfed her annual rent in value. The yearly Children's Hope Foundation Gala invariably drew New York's elite, and that particular evening, an indefinable electric tension permeated the space. "Refill, miss," a silver-haired woman commanded, extending an empty glass without so much as a glance. Sophia managed a tight-lipped smile. "Of course, ma'am." 6 hours into her shift, her feet ached in borrowed heels. Yet, this job was crucial. The catering company offered double pay for such high-profile events, and the extra income meant securing her studio apartment for another month, perhaps even patching up the ceiling leak. As she turned toward the bar, she felt it, a palpable shift in the room's energy, akin to the drop in air pressure preceding a storm. Antonio Russo had arrived. Sophia didn't yet know his name, but the raw power he exuded was unmistakable. The crowd parted silently, conversations abruptly ceasing. One woman even stumbled backward, nearly toppling over her gown. He moved through the ballroom with the predatory grace of a shark in shallow waters. Tall, clad in a dark suit, with a chiseled face reminiscent of Roman sculpture, his sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, and an expression suggesting he'd never once cracked a smile were remarkable. 3 men shadowed him, not mere bodyguards, but something far more menacing, like wolves masquerading as dogs. "That's Antonio Russo," Jenny, another waitress, whispered, clutching Sophia's elbow, her voice trembling. "Don't look at him. Don't even breathe near him." "Who?" Sophia asked. Jenny's eyes widened. "Girl, where are you from? He runs half the city. The half the mayor pretends doesn't exist." Sophia's stomach plummeted. The mafia, of course. She'd heard the ubiquitous tales of the Russo family. Bodies surfaced in the Hudson. Businesses mysteriously incinerated after owners refused protection. And witnesses suddenly afflicted with convenient amnesia. She should have retreated, sought refuge in the kitchen, done literally anything else. Instead, attempting to give the dangerous man more space, she stumbled backward, her heel catching on a chair leg. Time seemed to warp into slow motion. The tray tilted. 6 glasses of red wine launched skyward like crimson projectiles. Sophia's arms flailed as she lurched forward, directly into Antonio Russo's path. The wine splattered across his pristine white shirt, creating a Jackson Pollock masterpiece of ruined expensive fabric. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass, its shattering crystal echoing like a gunshot. As Sophia collided with him, instinct took over. She hugged him. Not a tentative touch or a steadying hand, but a full-body embrace, arms wrapped around his torso, her face pressed against his wine-drenched shirt. It was the kind of hug you offer family at an airport, a silent apology mixed with a desperate plea. "I'm sorry, please don't kill me, and this is truly the worst night of my life." For 3 agonizing heartbeats, the entire ballroom collectively held its breath. Antonio Russo stood utterly frozen, his hands hovering uselessly at his sides as if he'd forgotten their purpose. His face betrayed nothing, no rage, no shock, just a chilling blankness that somehow felt more perilous than outright anger. Sophia's mind finally caught up with her body. She recoiled, stumbling backward, wine dripping from her trembling fingers. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, her voice raw. "I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the shirt. I'll pay for everything. God, I'm so sorry." The ballroom remained eerily silent. Somewhere in the back, a photographer's camera flashed, then another. Suddenly, flashbulbs erupted like fireworks, as every society reporter in New York chronicled the extraordinary moment. One of Antonio's men moved forward, his hand slipping into his jacket. Sophia's life didn't flash before her eyes. Instead, She simply imagined her younger brother discovering her demise and how utterly unjust that would be. "Stop." Antonio's voice sliced through the hush low, gruff, with a faint hint of an Italian accent buried beneath decades of Brooklyn. The man froze. Antonio stared at Sophia, a piercing gaze as if trying to decipher an insoluble equation. His dark eyes moved from her face to her name tag. Sophia, emblazoned in cheerful cursive, then to her still trembling, wine-stained hands. "What's your name?" he asked. Sophia Castellano," she stammered, unable to stop talking, nerves loosening her tongue. "I work for Premium Catering. Well, I don't work for them. I'm freelance, an independent contractor, technically. I'm really sorry about your shirt. It's a nice shirt." "Was a nice shirt. I'll pay you back, I promise. I might need a payment plan, but—" "Go home, Sophia Castellano." It wasn't a threat, nor was it forgiveness. It was a dismissal, the way a king might banish a jester who had ceased to be amusing. Sophia needed no further prompting. She abandoned her tray, kicked off her heels, and sprinted through the stunned ballroom, past astonished faces, down the service corridor, not pausing until she burst into the cool November night air. Behind her, she didn't see Antonio Russo touch the spot on his chest where she had embraced him, nor the flicker of confusion that crossed his face before his mask of impassivity returned. She didn't see his consigliere, Rossi, lean in and whisper, "Boss." Every camera in that room caught it. She didn't see Antonio's jaw clench as he uttered, "Handle it." But by morning, Sophia would grasp the full repercussions of her actions. Because by morning, the embrace would be ubiquitous. The photo her arms wrapped around New York's most dangerous man, his face displaying the closest thing to surprise anyone had ever witnessed, hit social media at 11:47 p.m. By midnight, it boasted 10,000 shares. By 2 a.m., it had morphed into a meme. By dawn, it graced the front page of the New York Post with the headline, "Boss Goes Soft, Mafia King Gets Hugged into Submission." And somewhere in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Antonio Russo stood by his window, phone in hand, gazing at the photograph of a moment that should never have occurred, a moment that had irrevocably altered everything. His phone buzzed. Rossi's name appeared on the screen. "We have a problem," Rossi announced. Bernardi called an emergency meeting. All 5 families, they're talking. Antonio closed his eyes. In his world, talking meant planning. Planning meant bloodshed. "When?" he asked. "Tonight?" Antonio glanced at the photo again, at the girl with the terrified smile and wine-stained hands who had dared to do what no one in 10 years had. She had touched him as if he were human. And now, because of one impulsive moment, one accidental embrace, the entire underworld was circling like sharks scenting blood in the water. His blood. "Find out everything about Sophia Castellano," Antonio said softly. "Where she lives, where she works, who she loves." "You want her taken care of?" Rossi inquired. Antonio remained silent for a long moment. "I want her protected. She just became a piece on the board, whether she knows it or not." He ended the call and gazed out at the city, his city, illuminated like a constellation of possibilities and threats. The game had changed, and Sophia Castellano had no idea she had just become the most important person in New York. The emergency meeting convened in a location that officially didn't exist. A warehouse in Red Hook, belonging to no one and everyone. Luca Bernardi was the first to arrive, his silver Mercedes pulling up precisely at 1 a.m. He was old-school Italian, in his 60s, with slicked-back hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Vincent Chavez followed, representing the Dominican networks that controlled everything below 125th Street. Then came Marcus Webb, who ran the Irish docks. Finally, David Chun, quiet and lethal, who had forged Chinatown into an empire. 4 families, 4 men, who had learned to coexist in an uneasy peace, bound by one simple rule: don't make yourself look weak. Antonio Russo had just shattered that rule. "Gentlemen," Luca began, spreading his hands like a priest greeting his congregation. The photo of Sophia hugging Antonio was projected onto the wall, blown up to 10 feet tall. "I assume you've all seen this." Vincent barked a sharp laugh. "Seen it? My daughter sent it to me. It's got 3 million views. There are TikToks, Luca. TikToks of people reenacting it. The caption on Instagram, Marcus chimed in, reading from his phone, "When Bae finally shows emotion. 20,000 likes." He shook his head. "Antonio Russo is Bae now." "This isn't funny," Luca interjected, though his eyes gleamed. "This is an opportunity." David Chun, who rarely spoke, leaned forward. "Explain." "For 10 years, Russo has held the North Side with an iron fist," Luca articulated. "Nobody challenges him because nobody wants to test whether the stories are true." Luca pointed at the photo. "But look at his face. Really, look. That's not the face of a killer. That's the face of a man who doesn't know what to do when a girl hugs him." "So," Vincent pressed, "so maybe the stories aren't true anymore," Luca mused. "Maybe the king is getting soft." Luca pulled up another photo. Antonio at last month's shipping negotiation, stone-faced and dangerous. Then the hug photo again. "Men like us, we survive on reputation, on fear. The moment people stop being afraid, we're just well-dressed criminals waiting for a cell." Marcus leaned back, understanding dawning. "You want to test him?" "I want to prove he's soft in public," Luca declared, "in front of people who matter." Luca smiled. "There's a shipping negotiation Friday. 40 dock workers, 6 union reps, all watching to see who controls the waterfront contracts. I say we push. Make him choose between looking weak or showing his hand." "That's dangerous," David said quietly. "Everything we do is dangerous," Luca countered, spreading his hands. "That's the job." "I'm not advocating for war," he asserted. "I'm suggesting we ascertain the Emperor's true attire. If he retreats, we renegotiate territories. If he doesn't—" A casual shrug punctuated the statement. "Then our position becomes clear." Vincent's grin broadened. "I like it. Russo has monopolized the optimal shipping routes for far too long." The vote, it turned out, had been unanimous. Across town, high above a metropolis that never truly slept, Antonio Russo stood in his office, 5 men clamoring over his future. "This is a disaster, Rossi," his consigliere of 15 years, a lean, sharply featured man with silver streaks in his black hair, paced like a caged predator. "Every family, from here to Boston, is observing. They will undoubtedly test you, Tony. You know this." "Let them." Antonio's voice was devoid of emotion. "Let them." Rossi halted his pacing. "You can't be serious. The shipping negotiation is in 3 days. Bernardi will unquestionably make his move there. You need damage control, a public statement, something to remind everyone of your standing." "I know who I am." Antonio's gaze swept across the room. "Does the rest of the world?" Rossi gestured at a laptop displaying a viral photo. "Because right now, they perceive you as a teddy bear, letting random women embrace you at parties." Carlo Mancini, one of Antonio's underbosses, spoke from his vantage point by the window. Younger, in his early 30s, his polished good looks often led others to underestimate him, usually their final miscalculation. "Perhaps Rossi has a point, boss. Perhaps we need to send a message. Undeniable." Antonio's eyes slid to Carlo. "What kind of message?" "The girl, Sophia Castellano." Carlo shrugged nonchalantly. "She's the focal point of the narrative. Remove the narrative, the problem vanishes." A profound silence descended upon the room. Rossi closed his eyes. "Carlo, enough. I'm merely articulating what everyone is thinking." "No one is thinking that," Rossi snapped. "Engage your brain. Eliminating a random waitress over a hug doesn't project strength. It makes us appear frightened, feeble, as if she got under our skin." "She did get under our skin. Enough." Antonio's voice, though quiet, sliced through the argument. Both men fell silent. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, observing the city lights. When he spoke again, his tone was gentler, thoughtful. "The girl doesn't die. She is not a threat. She is nothing." "Boss," Carlo began, "she's also not the problem. Bernardi is the problem. He's been seeking an excuse to challenge me for 2 years. This merely provided him one." Antonio turned to face his men. "So, we grant him what he desires." Rossi's brow furrowed. "What does that imply?" "It implies we proceed to the negotiation, we permit him his maneuver, and then we remind everyone of the consequences for those who mistake patience for weakness." A slow smile spread across Rossi's face. You're going to let him believe he's winning, right up until he isn't. Carlo shifted uncomfortably. And the girl? The media won't release this. They're already camped outside her apartment. For the first time, a flicker crossed Antonio's features. Not anger, but something more elusive. Position 2 men on her, rotating shifts. If anyone touches her, if anyone so much as looks at her wrongly, I want to be informed. Boss, those are resources we could utilize. Antonio's gaze fixed on Carlo, who instantly ceased speaking. She became involved in this the moment she touched me. That makes her my responsibility. He returned to his desk, signaling the conversation's end. Now, leave. All of you. I have work to do. The men filed out. But Carlo paused at the door, glancing back at Antonio with an expression that could have been confusion, calculation, or ambition. Outside, as they walked to their cars, Rossi gripped Carlo's arm. Whatever you're contemplating, don't. Carlo pulled free. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. I've witnessed that look before, on men who ended up in the Hudson. Rossi stepped closer. Antonio isn't softening. He's playing chess while everyone else plays checkers. Don't be foolish enough to confuse the two. Carlo smiled, though his eyes remained cold. Of course, I would never doubt the boss. He walked away, leaving Rossi to watch him go, a sour feeling settling in his gut like stale coffee. The game was evolving. The only question was whether everyone grasped the new rules. Sophia knew she was in trouble when she saw the reporters. They were waiting outside her apartment building at 6 a.m., a small army armed with cameras and microphones. She'd managed 3 steps out the door before they swarmed her. Sophia, can you comment on your relationship with Antonio Russo? How long have you two been together? Is it true you're under his protection? Did he pay you to stage the hug? Sophia pushed through them, head down, desperate to reach the subway station 2 blocks away. Her phone had been ringing incessantly since yesterday. 37 missed calls, 62 text messages. Her Instagram had exploded with friend requests from accounts bearing 0 followers and suspicious names. Someone had located her address, posting it online with a map. No comment, she muttered, quickening her pace. I don't know him. It was an accident. An accident that's been viewed 20 million times. A camera flashed directly in her face. Sophia flinched, stumbling on the curb. Strong hands caught her elbow. One of the reporters, feigning assistance while securing his shot. She yanked free and ran. The subway offered a blessed reprieve, anonymous, dark. She found a seat in the corner and, with shaking hands, pulled out her phone. The catering company had called twice. She dialed back. Premium Catering, this is... Hi, it's Sophia Castellano. I received a message to call back. A pause. Then, Miss Castellano? Yes, I'm afraid we have to let you go. Sophia's stomach plummeted. What? Why? We've received attention. Our clients prefer discretion. This situation with Mr. Russo is the antithesis of discreet. I'm sure you understand. I don't understand. I spilled wine on someone. That's it. I didn't do anything wrong. Nevertheless, we cannot have our staff becoming tabloid stories. Your final check will be mailed. Good luck, Miss Castellano. Click. Sophia stared at her phone. Fired. She'd been fired for being clumsy. No, she'd been fired for accidentally hugging a mobster. The train lurched forward and Sophia closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She had $400 in her checking account. Rent was due in 3 weeks. Her brother's college tuition payment was approaching. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She couldn't afford any of this. By noon, things worsened. Sophia worked at Rosie's diner 3 days a week. Not for the meager pay, but because Rosie Martinez had given her a job when she was 18 and desperate, fresh off the bus from Pennsylvania, with nothing but a suitcase and hope. The diner was old-school Brooklyn, all cracked vinyl booths and burnt coffee, but it was hers in a way the catering gigs never were. She was halfway through her shift when the brick came through the window. The sound was deafening, glass exploding inward like a bomb, shards flying everywhere. A customer screamed. Sophia dove behind the counter as safety glass rained down like deadly confetti. "Everybody down!" Rosie yelled, grabbing the baseball bat she kept under the register. Sophia peeked over the counter. The brick lay in the middle of the diner floor, wrapped in paper. She crawled forward and, with shaking hands, grabbed it. The note, written in red marker, read, Mafia. Leave Russo alone. Oh my God, Sophia whispered. Rosie snatched the note, read it, and her face went ashen. Sophia, what the hell is going on? I don't know. I swear I don't know him. It was an accident at the gala. I spilled wine and it just happened. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to what? Become internet famous? Honey, you're all over the news. Mystery woman gets close to crime boss. They're saying you two are dating, that you're his girlfriend. That's insane. Welcome to the internet. Rosie pointed at the shattered window. But this is real. Whoever threw that brick knows where you work. They're sending a message. Sophia felt tears burning her eyes. What am I supposed to do? Rosie's expression softened. She pulled Sophia into a hug, a real one, not the panicked collision that started this nightmare. You're going home. Take a few days. Let this blow over. Rosie, I need this job, and you'll still have it. But right now, you're a target. I can't have you here if it means my other customers get hurt. She squeezed Sophia's shoulders. Go home, lock your doors. This will pass. Sophia wasn't sure she believed that, but she went home anyway. What Sophia didn't know was that she wasn't alone. In a black sedan parked 3 blocks from her apartment, 2 men watched a bank of monitors displaying live feeds from cameras that hadn't existed yesterday. Entrance, lobby, her floor, even a long-range shot of her front door. Boss wants updates every 2 hours, the driver said. His name was Tommy, and he'd been with the Russo family for 8 years. This is a waste of time, his partner muttered, babysitting some waitress. Boss doesn't waste time. If he says watch her, we watch her. They watched Sophia trudge up the stairs to her apartment, shoulders slumped, carrying her coat like it weighed 100 pounds. Tommy's phone buzzed, a text from Rossi. Any problems? He replied, brick through her workplace window. Note called her Russo's. She's scared. The response came back immediately. Get photos of the note. Find who threw it. Tommy zoomed in one of the cameras, capturing the note still clutched in Sophia's hand as she unlocked her door. We moving on this? His partner asked. Not yet. Boss wants to see how deep this goes first. In his penthouse, Antonio Russo watched the same feeds on his laptop. He had watched Sophia get mobbed by reporters, watched her get fired over the phone. He'd had someone hack her cellular provider for the audio, watched her dive behind the counter when the brick came through, watched her cry in the stairwell when she thought no one could see. His jaw tightened. Rossi entered without knocking. The brick, hurled from a burner account by a local kid hired on the dark web for $100, no questions asked, was untraceable. This meant someone wanted to convey a message without leaving any fingerprints, perhaps Bernardi or another party gauging my reaction. Antonio closed his laptop. Double the surveillance. I want identification on everyone within 50 feet of her, and I want that kid who threw the brick found. I need to know who paid him. Rossi interjected. Tony, she's merely a civilian caught in the crossfire. This is draining our resources. Antonio, straightening his cuffs, replied, She ceased being a civilian the moment that photograph went viral. Bernardi believes he can use her to reach me, to expose my weakness. Therefore, we protect her, not because I have a personal interest in one waitress, but because I refuse to grant him that satisfaction. Rossi scrutinized his boss's face. Is that truly the sole reason? Antonio offered no response. He turned back to the window, to his panoramic view of the city where, somewhere, a terrified young woman was learning that a single moment of clumsiness could unravel everything. He touched his chest, recalling her embrace. Those 3 seconds where someone had touched him without fear, calculation, or desire, as if he were simply a person. She's part of the board now, he stated quietly, whether she realizes it or not. The shipping negotiation unfolded in a warehouse at the Brooklyn docks, redolent with the scent of salt water and old money. 40 dock workers lined the walls, arms crossed, observing. 6 union representatives occupied a long table covered with contracts. This event was as much theatrical performance as it was business. Everyone present would recount the day's happenings, and these anecdotes would spread through every bar and break room, from Red Hook to Staten Island. Antonio arrived precisely on schedule. Rossi, 2 paces behind, meticulously scanned faces. The dock workers shifted uneasily as Antonio passed. Good. Fear, he mused, maintained order more effectively than any contract. Luca Bernardi was already seated, appearing relaxed in an expensive suit that didn't quite conceal the paunch at his belly. His enforcer, Marco, a 6'4" wall of muscle and bad attitude, stood behind him. Antonio and Luca exchanged smiles, like old friends reuniting. "So glad you could make it. We were just discussing the new shipping routes." "Were you, Antonio?" He took a seat, his tone a statement, not a question. For 30 minutes, negotiations ensued, percentages, routes, control of peers. It was the same ritual they enacted every quarter, each side vying for an extra point or two. Antonio, having done this for a decade, anticipated every move. Then Luca made his play. "Before we finalize," Luca announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I wanted to address something. There's been some concern in the community about your focus lately, Antonio." The warehouse fell silent. Dock workers exchanged glances. Even the union representatives looked up from their papers. Antonio's expression remained impassive. "Concern?" Luca spread his hands, feigning sympathy. "That incident at the gala, the photo, people are talking, wondering if your head's still in the game, or if it's somewhere else. Someone else." A few workers nervously chuckled. "Funny thing about that photo," Luca continued. "My daughter showed it to me. She thought it was cute." "Cute, Antonio. That's what people think when they see you now. Not dangerous, not powerful." "Cute." More laughter, bolder now. "I mean, we all understand. Pretty girl, innocent eyes. Must be refreshing after dealing with people like us all day." Luca leaned back. "But some of us worry you're getting soft. That maybe the old Antonio Russo, the one who made grown men piss themselves. Maybe he's gone. Maybe he got hugged to death." The warehouse erupted in laughter. Marco grinned, revealing too many teeth. Rossi tensed beside Antonio, his hand inching toward his jacket. Antonio caught his wrist, squeezing once. "Not yet." Antonio rose slowly. The laughter died as if a switch had been flipped. "You're right, Luca," Antonio said quietly. "That photo was unfortunate. It sent the wrong message, made people think I'd gone soft." Luca's smile widened, convinced of his victory. "So, let me clarify something." Antonio walked around the table, hands in his pockets, as nonchalant as a Sunday morning. "For anyone confused about who I am or what I'm capable of, for anyone who thinks a photograph changes 10 years of history." He stopped in front of Marco. "Your enforcer, what's his name?" Luca blinked. "Marco? Why?" Antonio looked up at the larger man. "You laughed at me." Marco's grin faltered. "Boss, I didn't mean—" "You laughed in front of 40 witnesses. You laughed because you think I'm soft now, that I've lost my edge." Antonio's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. "That's disrespectful, Marco. To me, to my reputation, and I can't let disrespect slide. You understand, Mr. Russo? I was just—" Antonio moved. It happened so swiftly that most people missed it. One moment he was still. The next he had Marco's wrist twisted at an impossible angle. The enforcer tried to pull away, and Antonio followed the momentum, using Marco's own strength against him. The crack echoed through the warehouse like a gunshot. Marco screamed, a high-pitched animal sound that made several dock workers flinch. He dropped to his knees, cradling his arm. The bone jutted at a grotesque angle. Not a clean break, but shattered. The kind of break requiring surgery, multiple surgeries. Antonio released him and stepped back, not a hair out of place. His breathing hadn't even changed. "Anyone else think I'm soft?" he asked the room. Silence. Absolute terrified silence. Antonio turned to Luca, who had gone pale. "The old shipping arrangement stands. You don't get the new routes. You don't get better percentages. And if I hear you've been talking about me or mine again, if I hear you've so much as mentioned that girl's name, Marco's arm will look like a best-case scenario compared to what happens to you." He let that sink in, let them all grasp it. The man who had built an empire on fear and blood hadn't vanished. The hug changed nothing. Nothing changed that. "We're done here." Antonio buttoned his jacket. "Rossi, let's go." As they walked to the car, Rossi finally spoke. "That was bold, breaking Bernardi's man in front of everyone. It was necessary. They needed reminding." The girl's going to be a bigger target now. Bernardi knows you're sensitive about her. Antonio stopped walking. Rossi was right, and they both knew it. By reacting even violently, Antonio had confirmed Luca's suspicion. Sophia mattered, and things that mattered were vulnerabilities. "Find her," Antonio commanded. "Bring her in, boss. She's a civilian. You really want to drag her deeper into this?" "She's already in it. She just doesn't know how deep yet." Antonio opened the car door. "Find her, make the offer, and Rossi?" "Yeah? Be nice. She's scared enough." In her apartment, Sophia was packing a bag. She had made the decision that morning. New York was no longer safe. She would return to Pennsylvania, stay with her cousin in Harrisburg, and devise a new plan. The city had chewed her up and was spitting her out. She was folding a sweater when someone knocked. Not the friendly knock of a neighbor, but sharp, authoritative. The kind of knock that proclaimed, "I'm not leaving until you open this door." Sophia peered through the peephole. A thin man in an expensive suit stood there, flanked by two others. He held up a business card to the peephole. "Rossi, business associate." No company name, no phone number, just that. "Miss Castellano," the man called through the door. "My name is Rossi. I work for Antonio Russo. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to make you an offer. 5 minutes of your time. That's all I'm asking." Sophia's hand trembled on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at her to remain silent, to pretend she wasn't home. But another part of her, the part that had survived 3 years in New York on pure stubbornness, knew hiding wouldn't work. If they had found her once, they would find her again. She opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged. "I don't want any trouble." "Neither do we, miss, but trouble's found you anyway. The question is whether you face it alone, or whether you let us help." "Help?" Sophia almost laughed. "Your boss is the reason I lost my job, the reason people are throwing bricks at me. How exactly is he helping?" Rossi's expression softened. "By making sure those people don't do worse than throw bricks. By keeping you alive while everyone figures out what that photo means." "It doesn't mean anything. I spilled wine. I apologized. That's it." "Maybe, but the world thinks it means something. And in our business, Miss Castellano, perception is reality." He handed a card through the gap in the door. "Mr. Russo would like to meet with you tonight to discuss your situation and offer solutions." "What if I say no?" "Then you're on your own, and I'll be honest with you, you won't last a week." The card was heavy, expensive paper, bearing only an address in Manhattan and a time, 8 p.m. "I don't have a choice, do I?" Rossi's smile was sad. "You had a choice. You made it 3 days ago when you hugged the most dangerous man in New York. Everything after that is just consequences." The penthouse was nothing like Sophia expected. She'd imagined dark wood and leather, something out of a gangster movie. Instead, it was modern and minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, white walls, and clean lines. The opulent apartment more closely resembled a tech mogul's residence than a criminal kingpin's hideout. Antonio Russo stood silhouetted against the window, his hands tucked into his pockets, observing the urban expanse below. He didn't acknowledge Miss Castellano's entry. His voice, a low and controlled rumble she distinctly recalled, carried the subtle inflection of Brooklyn beneath its polished cadence. "Thank you for coming." Like I had a choice. He finally turned. In the subdued light, he seemed less imposing than at the gala, perhaps because her exhaustion dulled her apprehension. "You always have a choice. You just don't always like the options." With a gesture toward the sofa, he offered, "Please sit." Sophia remained standing. "Why am I here?" "Because you're in danger. Because that photograph turned you into a target. Because there are currently individuals who intend to exploit you to reach me, and I cannot permit that. So this is about self-preservation." "Yes." His response was immediate and unvarnished. "But safeguarding you is an integral part of that equation." Sophia's laugh emerged sharp and bitter. "I've lost my job. Reporters besiege my home. Someone lobbed a brick through my workplace. And now you plan to... What? Help me? I'm the reason this is happening. I'm the reason you're still alive." The words struck her with the force of a physical blow, leaving Sophia's mouth parched. Antonio traversed the room, maintaining a careful distance. "The brick wasn't random. It was a test. Someone wanted to gauge my reaction. If I defended you, protected you, they received their answer today." "What does that mean?" "It means you matter to me now. Whether I desire it or not, whether you desire it or not. He retrieved his phone, displaying a picture. This is Marco Torelli. He works for Luca Bernardi, one of my rivals. This morning, I fractured his arm in front of 40 witnesses because he mocked you. Sophia stared at the hospital image, her stomach churning at the sight of the mangled limb. I didn't ask you to do that. No, but it was a necessary demonstration to convey a message. Unfortunately, the message conveyed was that you hold enough importance for me to disregard protocol, which makes you valuable, and valuable assets in my world tend to be stolen. Sophia retreated until her back met the window. What do you want from me? I need to control the narrative right now. Currently, you're an enigma, the woman who embraced the crime boss. That enigma poses a risk to both of us. He collected a folder from the coffee table and handed it to her. I manage a foundation. Children's literacy initiatives, after-school care, scholarship programs, entirely legitimate. I want you to work there. Sophia opened the folder, discovering a contract, a salary 3 times her previous earnings, health insurance, and benefits. You want to give me a job? I want to furnish you with a cover story, a plausible reason for our association. You're not just some random waitress. You're a foundation employee. We met at the gala because you work for my charity. The hug transforms into a collegial greeting. The story loses its intrigue. The media moves on. It was clever, disturbingly so. And if I refuse? Antonio's expression remained unchanged. Then you return to your apartment. You contend with the reporters, the harassment, the threats. You hope that whoever launched that brick won't escalate their actions next time. You hope Luca Bernardi doesn't deem you useful leverage. You hope you survive long enough for people to forget about you. That's not a choice. That's a threat. That's reality. He drew closer, and Sophia resisted the urge to recoil. I am not the villain in your narrative, Miss Castellano. I am merely the sole individual offering you an escape. Sophia's gaze flitted from the contract salary line to the desperately needed health insurance to the improbable chance of reclaiming her life. I need to consider it. Antonio nodded, about to speak, when Sophia's phone rang, her landlord. She almost let it go to voicemail, but an instinct compelled her to answer. Miss Castellano! Mr. Chen's voice was strained. I'm deeply sorry, but I must request you vacate your apartment by the end of the week. What? You can't do that. I have a lease, which includes a clause regarding criminal activity and public disturbances. The reporters are inconveniencing other tenants. I've received complaints. You need to leave. I'm not doing anything wrong. Nevertheless, by week's end, I apologize. He abruptly disconnected. Sophia stood, phone in hand, her life crumbling like sand. No job, no apartment, and only $400 in her bank account. Her younger brother depended on her for tuition assistance. What did he say? Antonio asked softly. I have to leave my apartment by Friday. She choked out a desperate, humorless laugh. Because of you. Because I had the abysmal fortune of spilling wine on you. She met his gaze, this dangerous man who had inexplicably become the epicenter of her collapsing world. Are you sorry? Are you truly sorry? Or is all of this merely a part of your game? For an instant, a flicker something almost human crossed his features. Both, he admitted. I regret that this has happened to you, but I'm also pragmatic enough to exploit it. Honest, at least. Sophia had to concede that. She looked at the contract again, then at her phone displaying her meager bank balance, then out the window at the city that had promised everything and delivered only chaos. If I do this, she stated slowly, I demand rules, boundaries. This is a job, nothing more. I arrive, complete my tasks, and when this subsides, I leave. We are not friends, we are not anything. Agreed. And I'll remain in my own residence. I am not moving into some... You've just been evicted. I'll find another place. Where the media will instantly locate you. Where you'll be vulnerable. Antonio shook his head. I have a guest wing, a private entrance, your own distinct space. You would be safer there. Absolutely not, Miss Castellano. No, I'm not living with you. That's absurd. They stared at each other. Sophia's phone buzzed again, a text from her building's group chat. The reporters are back. This is ridiculous. When are you leaving? Another message. My kids can't play outside because of your drama. Antonio observed her scanning the messages. You have until Friday. That's 3 days. Where will you go? Sophia longed to hurl the phone, to scream, to rewind to 4 days prior when a leaky ceiling was her most significant worry. Fine, she ground out through clenched teeth. Fine, I'll take the job and the guest wing, temporarily, until this calms down. Smart choice. Don't. She raised a hand. Don't pretend this is a choice. This is surrender. This is me being driven into a corner with no other recourse. I know. And he actually sounded genuine. Pack a bag. I'll send Rossi to collect you tomorrow. My belongings? I'll have them moved, professionally, stored until you require them. He escorted her to the door. This isn't what you desired. I understand that. But I promise you, you will be safe. That is not insignificant. Sophia paused on the threshold. What happens when they discover I'm living here? Won't that just exacerbate everything? Antonio's smile was chilling. Let them attempt to harm you under my roof. I dare them. It should have instilled terror. Instead, for the first time in 3 days, Sophia felt something akin to relief. She was now in the shark's territory, but at least she knew the shark's whereabouts. Sophia's guest wing surpassed the size of her entire previous apartment, boasting a private entrance, a bedroom, a sitting area, and a bathroom, with a tub large enough for 3. The closet was already filled with clothes in her size expensive brands she recognized from window shopping, but could never afford. They were tasteful, professional, and understated. The sheer level of preparedness unnerved her. She had been there for 2 days, 2 days of avoiding Antonio, eating meals in her room, and attempting to acclimate to the bizarre reality of residing in a crime boss's penthouse. Her foundation job wouldn't commence until Monday. Until then, she existed in a strange limbo. On the 3rd morning, boredom conquered her apprehension. Sophia ventured out of her wing, exploring the main residence. It was eerily quiet for a place she'd imagined teeming with dangerous men. She discovered a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a gymnasium that looked straight out of a luxury hotel, and finally, a massive chef's kitchen. The scent of coffee beckoned her. She was reaching for a mug when she overheard voices, angry voices emanating from the pantry area just around the corner. You think you can steal from this house? A man's voice, low and venomous. You think we wouldn't notice? I didn't. I swear, Mr. Mancini, I didn't take anything. A woman's terrified, youthful reply. Sophia froze. Every instinct urged her to turn back, to leave. This was not her concern. Yet, that voice, that fear, propelled her forward instead. She rounded the corner and stopped dead. Carlo Mancini had a young maid, no older than 20, pressed against the wall. A knife glinted in his hand, not touching her, but close enough to underscore the threat. The girl's face was streaked with tears. Please, the maid whimpered. I have a little sister. I need this job. Should have considered that before you stole. Hey! Sophia's voice emerged sharper and louder than intended. Carlo spun around, knife still in hand. His handsome face contorted into something ugly. This doesn't concern you. You're threatening her with a knife. That concerns anyone with basic human decency. Basic human? Carlo's laugh was sharp and cruel. You've been here 3 days and you believe you understand how things operate? This girl stole money from the household fund. That's theft. Theft is punished. I didn't steal anything, the maid sobbed. Sophia stepped closer, her heart pounding. Then call the police. Press charges. Don't threaten teenagers with knives in the kitchen like a psychopath. Carlo's eyes turned cold. You need to understand your place, sweetheart. You're not special. You're just the latest distraction. The boss will get bored, and then you'll be gone. But I'll still be here. So I suggest you turn around and put the knife down, Carlo. Antonio's voice sliced through the kitchen like frozen daggers. Carlos whirled around, only to find Antonio standing framed in the doorway. Though he wore his usual morning attire, dress pants and a white shirt with an unfastened collar, his expression conveyed anything but casual ease. Boss, this isn't... Carlos began, but Antonio's sharp command cut him off. Put it down. Carlos faltered. For a fleeting instant, Sophia glimpsed a flicker of calculation, then deep resentment. Cross his features before he slowly lowered the knife, placing it on the counter. She pilfered from us, Carlos stated, and I was handling it by threatening her in my kitchen. His gaze drifted pointedly towards Sophia, implying her unwelcome presence. Antonio stepped further into the room, each movement measured and deliberate, where Sophia, or any of the staff, could easily witness your theatrics, where you portray us as common thugs instead of shrewd businessmen. She's merely a maid, Carlos retorted. And you, Antonio replied with chilling calm, are merely an underboss. Which means you are not authorized to mete out punishment in my household without my explicit consent. His eyes then fell upon the trembling young woman. What is her name? Emeria, sir, Carlos mumbled. Maria. Antonio addressed her directly. Did you pilfer from the household fund? No, sir. I swear on my mother's grave I would never, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Antonio then retrieved his phone and placed a call. Rossi, regarding the household fund. Someone reported missing money. I require the security footage from the office, spanning the last 48 hours. He paused, listening intently. I'll wait. The silence that descended was excruciating. Carlo fidgeted, his jaw clenched tight. Maria pressed herself against the wall, a picture of stark terror. Sophia, caught between them, felt an acute awareness of having stumbled into a truly perilous situation. Antonio's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a subtle nod confirming what he saw. Maria, you are in the clear. The footage reveals you never entered the office. However, it does show someone else pocketing cash yesterday. His gaze drifted, settling pointedly on Carlo. Your nephew, Tommy's boy. Carlo's face drained of all color. You accused her. Antonio's voice was quiet, dangerously so, to shield your family. That demonstrates loyalty, a quality I value. But threatening an innocent staff member, reducing her to tears in my kitchen, that is careless. That is weak. Boss, I wasn't aware, Carlos stammered. You failed to verify. You made an assumption. Then you brandished a weapon at a young woman because it was simpler than owning up to your mistake. Antonio gestured toward the floor. Kneel. Carlo blinked. What? You heard me. Kneel. Apologize to Maria, then apologize to Sophia for subjecting her to this disgrace. Tony, come on. It's Mr. Russo when you've fallen short of my expectations. Kneel now. The kitchen grew heavy with a palpable tension, thick like a pressure cooker. Carlo's face cycled through shock, anger, and profound humiliation. Sophia saw his hand twitch, instinctively reaching for where she knew he likely carried a weapon. Don't be foolish, she prayed silently. Please, don't be foolish. Finally, with agonizing slowness, Carlos sank to one knee. I apologize, he uttered through gritted teeth. Maria, Miss Castellano, I was mistaken. Good. Antonio then turned his attention to Maria. Take the day off, paid. And if anyone harasses you about this, you come directly to me. Understood? Maria nodded frantically, then fled the kitchen. Antonio looked at Sophia. You should depart as well. I merely wished for coffee. There's a machine in your wing, he responded. It was a dismissal, yet strangely devoid of anger, almost protective in its undertone. Sophia, clutching a mug, filled it and left, but not before witnessing Antonio lean in close to the still kneeling Carlo, whispering something that rendered the underboss's face stark white. Later that afternoon, in the quiet of his study, Rossi found Antonio engrossed in reviewing contracts. Carlos is upset, Rossi remarked cautiously. You humiliated him in front of the girl and the staff. He humiliated himself, Antonio corrected, without looking up. I merely ensured everyone observed it. He's ambitious, Tony. Always has been. Actions such as this make him desperate. And desperate men often act foolishly. Antonio laid down his pen. What would your approach have been? Given him a pass? He's family. A third-generation Russo crew member. And that, Rossi, is precisely where we diverge. You would allow it to slide, permitting him to believe that family translates to immunity. I prefer that he clearly understands who is in command. Antonio reclined in his chair. Besides, Sophia was correct to intervene. The girl was blameless. Carlo was acting the bully. Rossi studied his boss. You are changing. No, I am adapting. Because of her. Antonio offered no verbal confirmation, yet none was needed. A perceptible shift had occurred within the household. The men felt it, especially Carlo. Antonio's choice to champion Sophia's sense of justice over his underboss's authority was a stark declaration. In their world, perception reigned supreme, and the current perception was clear. Sophia Castellano wielded influence. That made her powerful. And in Antonio's world, power inevitably carried a steep price. The reporter seemed pleasant enough. Her name was Jessica Mills, and she approached Sophia outside the foundation office on her third day of work. Jessica was young, professional, with warm eyes and an effortlessly disarming smile. Sophia, "Hi, I'm Jessica from the Metro Weekly. I know you've been dealing with a lot of media attention. I wanted to offer you a chance to tell your side of the story, the real story, not the tabloid fabrication." Sophia had been explicitly instructed by Rossi to decline all media requests, but Jessica was neither forceful nor intrusive. She simply exuded a genuine sincerity. "I don't believe that's a wise idea," Sophia responded cautiously. "I understand," Jessica replied, "but these narratives aren't going to vanish. Everyone is speculating, constructing their own versions. Wouldn't you prefer to control what people believe?" Jessica extended a business card. "A reputable publication, rigorous fact-checking, no sensationalism, just your truth." Sophia examined the card. Metro Weekly was indeed legitimate. She had seen it on newsstands, not some scurrilous gossip rag. "Off the record," Jessica added, a compelling wink in her tone. "Just a conversation. I won't publish anything you're uncomfortable with." That was the hook. Off the record felt safe. They met at a coffee shop situated 2 blocks from the foundation. Jessica began with innocuous questions. How was Sophia adjusting? Was the foundation role fulfilling? Did she feel secure? Then the question subtly shifted. "So, you're currently residing in Mr. Russo's penthouse in the guest wing temporarily, until the media frenzy subsides. It must be peculiar living with someone of his reputation." "It's fine," Sophia replied. "He's been professional." "Professional," Jessica echoed, a slight smile playing on her lips. "That's an intriguing choice of words. Some might suggest you've secured quite the arrangement. A magnificent apartment, a well-compensated position, and the protection of one of New York's most powerful men." A certain inflection in Jessica's voice made Sophia pause. "It's not like that." "Like what?" "Like whatever you're implying. I spilled wine on him. Everything since then has been about damage control. I didn't solicit any of this." "But you are benefiting from it," Jessica pressed, her tone sharper. "While he's out there, metaphorically, breaking people's arms to defend your honor." Sophia set down her coffee cup. "I believe we're finished here." "Wait, I apologize. That came out poorly." Jessica's expression softened. "I'm merely trying to comprehend. You transitioned from a waitress to inhabiting a penthouse in less than a week. Some might deem that incredibly convenient." "Some people," Sophia retorted, "don't know what they're talking about." "So, you're asserting that Mr. Russo isn't soft on you? That the rumors swirling about him undergoing a change are unsubstantiated?" "I am stating that I barely know him. We aren't anything. He offered me protection because the situation spiraled out of control. That is all." Jessica nodded, diligently jotting down notes. "And his men, how do they treat you?" Sophia recalled Carlo's icy stare across the dinner table, the hushed whispers that ceased abruptly whenever she entered a room. "Some of them don't want me there. I can't blame them. You're an outsider who entered their world and somehow ended up with special treatment. It must generate tension, I suppose. Do you believe he's growing soft? Antonio Russo, I mean. Everyone is asking. The embrace, the protection, making you untouchable. Is the king losing his edge?" The question landed with the chilling finality of a trap snapping shut. "I need to leave," Sophia declared, standing abruptly. "Sophia, wait!" Jessica called out, but Sophia was already striding away, a queasy knot forming in her stomach. The article hit newspapers 48 hours later. Inside the mob boss's penthouse, waitress speaks out about Antonio Russo's soft side. Sophia stared at her phone in horror, scrolling through quotes that were technically hers, yet grotesquely distorted beyond recognition. "Some of his men don't want me there. I can't blame them. Special treatment creates tension. And the most damning of all, is the king losing his edge, I guess?" The article painted her as a conniving opportunist who had manipulated a privileged position, now openly mocking Antonio behind his back, labeling him soft, and questioning his power. Her phone rang. It was Rossi. "Get to the penthouse now." The atmosphere in Antonio's office was nuclear. 6 men encircled the desk where Antonio sat, his face a stone mask, scrutinizing the article on his tablet. Carlos stood closest, practically vibrating with incandescent rage. "She manipulated you," Carlos spat. "We all knew it. She's been laughing at you this entire time." "We don't know that," Rossi interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. "It's right there, in print," Carlo thundered. "She called you soft, claimed you've lost your edge. She's deriding you to the press." He slammed his hand on the desk. "This is precisely what Bernardi intended. Proof that you are weak, that you allowed some insignificant waitress to make a fool of you." Another underboss, Marcus, nodded grimly. "The guys are talking, boss. They're saying you're distracted, that you care more about protecting her than protecting your reputation." "She needs to go," Carlo insisted. "Tonight, make an example. Show everyone that nobody disrespects you. Nobody." Antonio remained silent, absorbed in the article. Tony Rossi stepped forward. "I reluctantly agree, not about making an example, but about severing ties with her. This article portrays you as weak. It portrays all of us as weak. You require distance from her. Relocate her somewhere secure. Provide her with financial assistance, but get her out of your house." More murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Antonio finally looked up, his expression utterly unreadable. "You are all imbeciles," he stated calmly. The room fell into an abrupt, stunned silence. "Boss," Carlo began, his voice laced with disbelief. "This," Antonio interrupted, standing and tossing the tablet onto the desk, "is precisely what Bernardi desires. You fail to grasp it." He began to pace, hands tucked into his pockets. A reporter approaches Sophia, puts her at ease, gets her talking, then distorts every word to fabricate the impression that she is ridiculing me. The article surfaces precisely when tensions with the other families are at their zenith. Perfect timing to make me appear vulnerable and force my hand. If I harm her, I validate my fear of public opinion. If I expel her, I confirm she has gotten under my skin. Either way, Bernardi achieves his objective. "So, what do you recommend?" Rossi probed. "I suggest we take no action," Antonio replied firmly. "Nothing?" Carlos's voice cracked, incredulous. "She called you soft." "She labeled me a professional," Antonio countered. The reporter deliberately twisted it. "There's a clear distinction." Antonio fixed Carlos with an unwavering gaze. Anyone incapable of discerning this obvious manipulation probably shouldn't be involved in critical decision-making within these walls. Carlos's face flushed crimson. "The article is purely bait," Antonio continued, "designed to provoke an emotional outburst from me rather than a strategic response. They want me to inflict harm upon her, which would paint me as a monster. Alternatively, they desire for me to cast her aside, making me appear weak. Therefore, we will do neither." "What then?" Marcus inquired. "Business as usual," Antonio stated. "Sophia remains. She continues her work. We act as though this article is beneath our notice." Antonio returned to his desk. "And we ascertain who funded Jessica Mills, because reporters don't concoct smear campaigns without compensation." Rossi slowly nodded. "You suspect Bernardi bankrolled it?" "I know he did," Antonio affirmed, a cold smile touching his lips. "He's probing for vulnerabilities, testing our boundaries. Let him persist in his testing. Each move he makes furnishes us with more intelligence." "What about Sophia?" Rossi asked, concern etched on his face. "She's going to be devastated by this. She is also the victim. Bernardi exploited her to reach me. That makes her more valuable, not less." Antonio glanced at his watch. "She should arrive shortly. Upon her arrival, everyone will treat her with normalcy and professionalism. No accusations, no hostility. Am I understood?" Reluctant nods spread throughout the room, save for Carlos, whose jaw remained so tightly clenched Sophia could practically hear his teeth grinding. "Carlos, am I clear?" Antonio pressed. "Crystal, boss," Carlos replied, but his eyes conveyed a very different message. When Sophia arrived, visibly terrified and profusely apologetic, Antonio intercepted her in the hallway. "I'm so terribly sorry," she began immediately. "I shouldn't have spoken to her. I didn't intend—" I didn't utter those things in the manner she portrayed them. I swear I didn't. I know, Antonio said calmly. Sophia stopped, startled. No, it's a calculated setup. Bernardi is challenging me, using you as a pawn. Antonio's expression softened slightly. You're not in any trouble, Sophia. You're simply caught in the crossfire of something entirely unrelated to you. Relief washed over her features. So, I can stay? You can stay. What he withheld from her was the stark truth. Staying made her both a shield and a target. That his decision to retain her had just deepened the chasm between him and his men. That Carlos was already plotting his next move. Some truths Antonio had learned were kinder left unspoken. The children's literacy benefit was a small, intimate affair, precisely the kind of low-key gathering that would help normalize Sophia's presence in Antonio's world. 50 donors, no press, just affluent individuals writing checks and basking in their own philanthropy. Antonio had insisted on her attendance. We need to be seen together, appearing professional, he had explained that morning. Colleagues, nothing more. It solidifies the narrative that you work for the foundation. So Sophia donned one of the dresses that had mysteriously materialized in her closet, a navy blue, elegant yet unassuming garment, and flawlessly played the role of a grateful employee. She smiled engagingly at donors, discussed the foundation's programs, stood beside Antonio as he delivered a brief speech, and, remarkably, no one expired or brandished a firearm. It almost felt normal. You performed admirably tonight, Antonio remarked as they exited through the back door. His driver, Tommy, awaited them with the car, a black SUV with tinted windows. 2 additional SUVs flanked them, front and rear, for security. I wasn't aware I was being evaluated, Sophia quipped, climbing into the back seat. Antonio slid in beside her. You are always being evaluated. Everyone here observes to determine if you are a liability or an asset. And what's the verdict? Still pending. Yet, there was an unmistakable hint of approval in his tone. The convoy smoothly pulled onto the darkened street. This section of Manhattan was eerily quiet at night. Warehouses, shuttered businesses, the kind of industrial zone that emptied after 5 p.m. Tommy drove expertly, the 2 escort vehicles maintaining precise positions. Sophia watched the city lights blur past. May I ask you something? You just did. Why did you truly allow me to stay after the article? Antonio was silent for a moment. Because Bernardi desired a reaction from me. He wanted me to prove I was afraid, or enraged, or weak. The most effective way to win that particular game is to refuse to play. So, I'm merely a chess piece? We are all chess pieces. The critical question is whether you move yourself or permit someone else to move you. Sophia was still processing this thought when the first SUV erupted. Not literally exploded, but one moment it was ahead of them, and the next it swerved violently as gunfire ripped through its windows. Glass shattered. The vehicle careened into a parked truck. Get down! Antonio's hand clamped on Sophia's head, forcing her below the window line. Tommy cursed, slamming the accelerator. More gunshots erupted, loud, impossibly loud, like fireworks detonating inside her skull. The rear window shattered, showering glass across the seat. They're boxing us in, Tommy shouted. Sophia's heart pounded against her ribs. She couldn't see, pinned against the leather seat with Antonio's weight partially covering her, but she heard everything. Gunfire, screeching tires, men yelling. The rear escort vehicle returned fire. Their SUV lurched left, mounted a curb, crashed through a chain-link fence. Service alley, Tommy yelled. Hold on. The vehicle scraped between 2 buildings, so narrowly that the side mirror shattered. Behind them, more gunfire. One of the rear tires blew, sending them into a fishtail. Tommy wrestled with the wheel, straightened them out, and slammed into a garbage truck, blocking the alley exit. The impact propelled Sophia forward into her seatbelt. Her head struck something hard. Stars exploded across her vision. Out now! Antonio's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. He kicked his door open and pulled her across the seat. Sophia's legs felt leaden, everything moving as if she were submerged in water. Can you run? Antonio demanded. Sophia nodded, likely a lie, but what alternative did she have? They were in some kind of service alley, surrounded by dumpsters and loading docks. Tommy was already out, weapon drawn, scanning for threats. The rear escort vehicle shrieked into the alley behind them. Then, men appeared at the other end. 3 of them, armed, moving with military precision. "Russo!" one of them called out. "Bernardi sends his regards." Antonio pushed Sophia behind him. "Get behind the dumpster. Stay low. Don't move until I tell you. Do it." Sophia ran, her heels clicking on the pavement, and dove behind a rusted industrial dumpster. Her dress tore. Her palms scraped concrete. None of it mattered because the shooting began again. Antonio moved with the precision of a choreographed dancer. The first attacker fired 3 shots. Antonio was already in motion, utilizing the SUV for cover, returning fire with a gun Sophia hadn't seen him draw. The attacker went down, clutching his leg. The second attacker emerged from the vehicle's opposite side. Antonio spun, seized the man's gun arm, twisted it at a sickening angle. The weapon clattered away. Antonio's elbow smashed into the man's face once, twice, then drove him into the SUV's hood with a knee to the stomach. The man crumpled. The third attacker took 3 steps before Tommy shot him in the shoulder. And then it was over. Just like that. 30 seconds of violence, and 3 men were incapacitated. Blood pooled on the pavement. One of them groaned, attempting to crawl away. Tommy kicked his gun out of reach. Sophia's hands trembled. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Antonio walked to the first man, the one he'd shot in the leg, and pressed his foot on the wound. The man screamed. "Who else knew about tonight?" Antonio asked, his voice conversational, as if inquiring about the weather. "Fuck you!" Antonio pressed harder. "Who else knew?" "Inside job," the man gasped. Someone in your crew gave Bernardi the route." Sophia watched from behind the dumpster, unable to tear her gaze away. This was the true Antonio Russo, not the composed businessman, not the smooth operator. This was the man who had forged an empire on fear. He was terrifying, and he had just killed 2 people protecting her. Antonio removed his foot, pulled out his phone. "Rossi, we were ambushed. 3 attackers. They knew our route. We have a leak." He paused. "Handle it, and send a cleanup crew to the industrial district off 9th Avenue. He ended the call and finally turned to Sophia. "You can come out now." Sophia stood on trembling legs. Her dress was ruined, her hands bleeding, her mind replaying the violence on a continuous loop. Antonio crossed to her, and she flinched. He stopped. Something flickered across his face. Not hurt, precisely, but awareness. "Are you injured?" he asked quietly. "No, just scared." "Good. Fear keeps you alive." He looked at the bodies, then back at her. "This is what my world looks like, Sophia. Not foundations and charity galas. This, blood and bullets and people trying to kill you in dark alleys. You understand now?" Sophia nodded. She understood perfectly. She was in a war zone, and Antonio Russo was the only thing shielding her from the people who sought to use her as ammunition. "The car's dead," Tommy said, rejoining them. "Backup's 3 minutes out." Antonio removed his jacket and draped it over Sophia's shoulders. It was warm and smelled of expensive cologne and gunpowder. "We wait," Antonio said. "And Sophia, you listened when I told you to get down. You didn't panic. You stayed put." He almost smiled. "You might actually survive this after all." It should have been comforting. Instead, Sophia realized with creeping horror that mere survival had now become the benchmark for success. And the night had just brutally demonstrated how easily that benchmark could be shattered. Sophia did not leave the penthouse for 5 days. Not couldn't, but wasn't allowed. Antonio had tripled security. Men with guns stood outside her wing. Cameras monitored every entrance. The windows of the penthouse had been fortified with bulletproof glass overnight, transforming what once offered an expansive view into an impenetrable barrier. When Sophia requested to visit the foundation office, Rossi, with a tone that was both polite and resolute, declined. "No, it's too precarious right now. We are still investigating the leak," he stated, effectively sealing her fate. Sophia found herself once again confined, a gilded bird in a cage that seemed to shrink with each passing day. She attempted to occupy her mind, delving into books from the extensive library and contributing remotely to foundation projects. She desperately tried to suppress the horrifying images of the bodies in the alley, the echo of gunshots, and the chilling nonchalance with which Antonio had pressed his foot on a man's bleeding wound. Yet, the enclosure seemed to tighten around her with relentless pressure. On the fifth evening, her composure shattered. Antonio was engrossed in reviewing documents in his study when Sophia burst in, forgoing a knock. She was still in her pajamas, her hair in disarray, and her eyes ablaze with indignation. "I want out!" she declared, her voice trembling. Antonio calmly lifted his gaze, his expression unreadable. Out. Out of this penthouse. Out of this life. Out of whatever distorted protective arrangement we have. Her voice quivered with raw emotion. "You promised to keep me safe. This isn't safety. It's a prison." Antonio's response was clipped. "A prison that has kept you alive." Sophia retorted, "No, you dragged me into this. Before you, I was a nobody, an invisible waitress. Now, I have people trying to kill me, reporters hounding me, and your own men conspiring against me." She let out a bitter, high-pitched laugh. "You're not protecting me, Antonio. You've brought me into this chaos." A fleeting shadow crossed his face. "Do you truly believe I don't recognize that fact?" she pressed. "Then let me go. Send me away. Provide me with money and a new identity. Let me vanish. Anything is preferable to languishing in this apartment, awaiting the next attempt on my life." Antonio's voice was sharp. "You wouldn't last a week." "Perhaps not," she conceded. "But at least it would be my decision." Antonio slowly rose, his voice quiet, but laced with an undercurrent of peril. "Your choice? You want to discuss choices?" He continued, "Every decision I've made since that gala has been dedicated to preserving your life, moving you here, securing your employment, defending your presence to my men, brutally breaking Marco's arm, and fighting off an ambush that claimed the life of one of my most skilled drivers." Sophia faltered. She had indeed known about the driver. "Every choice," Antonio reiterated, "has chipped away at my authority, my respect, and the unity within my own organization. I have an underboss who questions every single decision I make because of you. Rivals perceive me as having grown soft, all due to your influence. And there's a leak within my crew, someone willing to betray me, quite likely because of you." "Then why?" Sophia's voice cracked. "Why persist in doing this? Why not simply release me?" Antonio opened his mouth, then closed it, turning to stare out the window, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders rigid. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. "Because you hugged me," he finally murmured. Sophia blinked. "What?" "That night at the gala. You spilled wine on me, and instead of just apologizing or fleeing, you embraced me." He let out a sharp, mirthless laugh. "Do you comprehend how long it has been since someone touched me without fear, without calculation, without desiring something?" Antonio recounted. 10 years, perhaps even longer. People shake my hand because they are obligated to. They sit opposite me during negotiations, their hands hidden beneath the table where I cannot observe them. They flinch when I move too quickly. Even my own men surreptitiously gauge the distance to the nearest exits when my anger surfaces. He turned to face her, and Sophia witnessed a side of him she had never seen before. Not the ruthless crime boss, nor the shrewd businessman, but simply a man who appeared utterly exhausted. "But you," he continued softly, "you collided with me and simply held on, as if I were a normal person, as if I were human. And for 3 fleeting seconds, I remembered what that felt like." Sophia's anger dissipated, replaced by a complex emotion that made her chest ache. "I cannot afford to feel human," Antonio stated. "The moment I do, I err. I let down my guard. I display weakness. And in my world, weakness results in death." He moved closer. "Yet, I cannot seem to cease protecting you. I cannot seem to release you, because every time I see you, I recall those 3 seconds." "That's not fair," Sophia whispered. "No, it isn't." He stopped 2 feet away, close enough for her to discern the profound weariness in his eyes and the streaks of gray in his dark hair. "I am truly sorry for everything. For entangling you in this, for keeping you captive, for being too selfish to allow you to disappear." "You're not selfish. You're scared." His jaw tightened. "I am not. You are. You're afraid that if I leave, you'll revert to the man who hasn't been hugged in 10 years. The man everyone fears. You're afraid of being alone." The words hung between them like a live wire. "Perhaps," Antonio finally conceded. "Perhaps I am." Sophia sank into the chair behind her, all her defiance drained, replaced by an encompassing weariness. "I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know how to exist in your world. I'm not built for violence, for constant danger, for perpetually looking over my shoulder." "Neither was I." "Once," Antonio said, taking a seat across from her. "I was destined to be a lawyer, did you know that? Attended Columbia, graduated at the top of my class. Then my father was murdered, and suddenly I was the heir to something I never desired. You could have walked away. Could I? With my family's blood on my hands and everyone waiting to see if I'd collapse?" He shook his head. "We don't always get to choose our lives, Sophia. Sometimes life chooses for us. The real question is what we do with the hand we're dealt. And what am I supposed to do with mine? Survive, adapt, fight." He leaned forward. "You are more resilient than you realize. You didn't panic during the ambush. You listened. You remained calm. That is significant." "I was terrified." Fear and strength are not antithetical. The bravest individuals I know are perpetually scared. They simply refuse to let fear paralyze them. Sophia met his gaze, truly looking at him for the first time since her furious entrance. She saw the exhaustion, the internal conflict, the man beneath the formidable reputation. "I'm still angry with you," she stated. "I know, and I still desire to eventually leave. I know that too, but I don't want you to die because of me. I don't want anyone else to die because of me." Antonio's expression softened. "Then we will figure it out together. I will uncover the leak. I will handle Bernardi. And when it is truly safe, you can decide whether to stay or to go." "And if I choose to go?" He remained silent for an extended moment. "Then I will provide you with enough money to begin anew anywhere you wish, a clean slate, a new life." He paused. "But I will mourn those 3 seconds." Something twisted in Sophia's chest. This was dangerous, not in the way of bullets and ambushes, but something far more insidious. She was beginning to perceive Antonio Russo as human, and that realization changed everything. "I should go to bed," she said, rising. "Sophia." She paused at the door. "Thank you for listening tonight, for not fleeing when you had the opportunity." "I didn't have a choice," she said. "You always have a choice. You simply chose to remain." Sophia departed before she could truly analyze why that statement resonated with such truth. Behind her, Antonio returned to the window, his hand unconsciously touching his chest, the very spot where she had hugged him 2 weeks and a lifetime ago. The fissure in his armor was undeniably widening, and somewhere within the expansive penthouse, Carlo was meticulously taking notes. The guard stationed outside Sophia's wing was new. She had noticed him that morning. He was young, in his early 20s, with nervous eyes that consistently avoided hers. He wasn't part of the usual rotation. When she had inquired about him with Rossi, he had offhandedly dismissed her concern. "Jimmy called in sick. This is Danny, a good kid, thoroughly vetted." Sophia hadn't given it another thought. Too engrossed in her foundation work, the feeling of the walls closing in, and the haunting memory of Antonio's confession 3 nights prior. I remembered what it felt like to be human. She was reviewing donor spreadsheets on her laptop when her door opened without a knock, simply swinging inward. Carlo stepped inside, with the casual air of someone who owned the place. Danny, the new guard, stood behind him, his gun pointed at the floor. Sophia's blood ran cold. "Mr. Mancini," she stated, maintaining a steady voice. "Is there something I can assist you with?" "Actually, yes." Carlo closed the door behind him. "You can accompany me, quietly, without making this difficult." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Carlo sighed, as if she were a child refusing to eat her vegetables. "See, I was hoping you'd be sensible about this. Save everyone some trouble. Antonio isn't here. He's at a meeting in Queens. Won't be back for another 2 hours. Carlo checked his watch. "Plenty of time to get you where you need to go." Sophia's hand instinctively reached for her phone. Carlo was quicker. He snatched it from the table and slipped it into his pocket. "Danny here will report a false alarm. Nothing happened. You simply retired early. By the time anyone realizes you're gone, we'll be across state lines." "Why are you doing this?" Carlo's expression hardened. Because I'm weary of observing a waitress dismantle everything we have painstakingly built. Antonio has changed since your arrival, softer, weaker, making decisions with his emotions rather than his intellect. The men perceive it, our rivals perceive it. He is now a liability. He protected me. He's obsessed with you. There's a distinct difference. Carlo moved closer, and Sophia instinctively backed away until she hit the wall. You are the problem. Eliminate you, and Antonio will revert to his former self. Or he won't, and someone stronger will take over. Someone like you? Someone like me. Carlo smiled. Bernardi is offering me a seat at his table. Real power. All I need to do is deliver one terrified little girl. Sophia's mind raced. The door was blocked. The window was bulletproof. She couldn't break it even if she tried. The guard was compromised. Screaming would only attract more of Carlo's people. She was trapped. Antonio will kill you for this, she said quietly. Perhaps, if he survives what unfolds next. Carlo nodded to Danny. Bring the van around back, service entrance. Danny hesitated. Boss said no one moves her without his direct. I am giving you a direct order. Or are you having second thoughts about our arrangement? Their arrangement? Carlo had bought him, likely with more money than a 20-something guard earned in a year. Danny left, leaving Sophia alone with Carlo. You don't have to do this, she tried. Antonio trusts you, values you. If you just... Antonio values you. That's precisely the problem. He broke Marco's arm just for laughing about you. He made me kneel before the entire staff because I dared to threaten some maid you'd never even met. Now, everything circles back to you. Carlos's voice was laced with resentment. I've been with his family since I was 16, earned my position, bled for it. Yet, you embrace him once, and suddenly you're untouchable. I never asked for any of this, Sophia countered. Doesn't matter, you're here, and as long as you are, Antonio is vulnerable. The organization is vulnerable. So, you leave, or we all face ruin with you. Danny reappeared, whispering something to Carlo, who then nodded. The van's ready, let's go. No. Carlo produced a gun, not pointing it directly at her, but ensuring it was visible, a stark reminder of how quickly circumstances could turn deadly. I don't want to harm you, Sophia. Bernardi wants you alive, but alive doesn't necessarily mean unharmed. Walk with me, or Danny will carry you. Your choice. Sophia's hands trembled. She considered screaming, fighting, every disastrous way this could conclude, but then Antonio's words echoed in her mind. Fear and strength aren't opposites. Fine, I'll go. Carlo's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Just like that? Just like that. Because you're right, I'm not brave enough to be shot over this, she replied, her voice soft and deflated. Just, please don't hurt me. Carlo subtly relaxed, a fatal error, believing he had triumphed. They navigated through unfamiliar service corridors, Danny positioning himself behind Carlo, his gun tucked into his jacket. They passed storage rooms, staff quarters, and a laundry facility, venturing deeper, further from any potential help. Eventually, they reached a service exit where an unmarked van idled in the alley. Carlo ordered Sophia into the back. It was windowless, an empty cargo space with zip ties strewn across the floor. Her stomach plummeted. Carlo climbed in after her, and Danny took the driver's seat. Hands! Carlo commanded, picking up the zip ties. Sophia extended her wrists. He bound them tightly, unnecessarily so, the plastic biting into her skin. Nothing personal, Carlo stated. Just business. The van lurched forward, and through a crack in the partition, Sophia watched the penthouse vanish. She was alone, bound, and heading towards people who intended to use her as a weapon. And Antonio remained blissfully unaware. 20 minutes later, Rossi discovered the empty room. The laptop was still open, Sophia's jacket draped over a chair, her phone gone, and Danny absent from his post. A chill ran down his spine. He immediately contacted Antonio. Boss, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Sophia's gone. Her guards are missing. There's no sign of struggle. Find her. Antonio's voice turned lethally calm. Check the security footage. Every camera, every angle. Find out who took her and where they went. Rossi accessed the security system on his tablet, scrolling through feeds until he found the service corridor camera. He watched Carlo lead Sophia away at gunpoint. Boss, Rossi said, his voice trembling with fury. It was Carlo. Silence hung heavy on the line, the ominous quiet preceding a storm. "He's working with Bernardi," Rossi continued. "It has to be. He's delivering her." "Where?" "I don't know yet. Give me 10 minutes. "You have 5, and Rossi." "Yeah? When I find Carlo, there won't be enough left to bury." The line went dead. Rossi stared at the security footage, observing Carlo, Antonio's underboss, his father's godson, family for 20 years, betraying everything for ambition. This was more than just a kidnapping. It was war. And Sophia Castellano, the woman who had merely hugged a crime boss at a charity gala, was the spark poised to ignite everything. Inside the van, Sophia pressed her bound hands against her stomach, attempting to regulate her breathing. She had survived 2 weeks in Antonio's world. Reporters, threats, ambushes, and lockdowns. She just needed to survive a little longer. Long enough for Antonio to find her, because he would find her. She believed this with a certainty that terrified her more than the zip ties, the gun, or the men who wanted to use her as ammunition. He would come, and when he did, may God help anyone who had touched her. The warehouse was in Jersey, an abandoned structure, the kind of place where grim deeds occurred and bodies vanished. Sophia sat in a metal chair, her hands still bound, while Carlo paced, checking his phone. They had been waiting for 20 minutes. Luca Bernardi was late. "He'll be here," Carlo muttered, more to himself than to her. "He promised a seat at the table. Real power." "You're an idiot," Sophia stated. Carlo spun around. "What? You heard me? Do you honestly believe Bernardi will honor a deal with someone who betrayed his own boss? He's going to use you and then discard you." "Shut up!" "Antonio trusted you, treated you like family, and you sold him out for a promise from a man who breaks promises for a living." Carlo backhanded her. Sophia's head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. She tasted blood. "I said, shut up!" Carlo's hand trembled. "You don't know anything. You're just some waitress who got lucky, who stumbled into something she doesn't understand." "I understand betrayal when I see it." Before Carlo could retort, car doors slammed outside, followed by voices and footsteps. Luca Bernardi entered with 4 men, looking self-satisfied, like a cat who had just caught a particularly cunning mouse. "Carlo," Luca smiled, "you actually did it. I'm impressed." "We had a deal," Carlo said. "I delivered her. Now I want my seat at the table." "Yes, yes," Luca waved dismissively. "We'll discuss that. First, let's talk about this one." He approached Sophia, tilting her chin up to examine her bruised face. She recoiled. "The girl who tamed Antonio Russo with a hug." Luca laughed. Hard to believe such a little thing could cause so much chaos. "I didn't cause anything," Sophia insisted. "No, you made him weak, made him sloppy, made him start a war over a nobody." Luca pulled out his phone, beginning to record. "Now you're going to help me finish it. You're going to tell the world that Antonio Russo is dangerous, unstable, that you've been his prisoner, that you fear for your life." It wasn't a request. Luca nodded to one of his men, who grabbed Sophia's hair and yanked her head back. "You'll read exactly what I tell you to read, and if you don't, I'll start removing fingers until you change your mind." Sophia's heart pounded. The camera pointed at her face. Luca held up a script. "Read." Sophia looked at the words, then at Luca's smug face, then at Carlo, who refused to meet her eyes. And then she heard it. Gunfire outside, shouts, then more gunfire. Luca's expression shifted. "What?" The warehouse door exploded inward. Antonio Russo walked through like death itself, flanked by Rossi and 6 armed men. His suit was impeccable, his face perfectly calm, but his eyes were murder. "Sophia," he said quietly, "close your eyes." She obeyed. What followed, she only heard. Gunfire, screaming, bodies hitting concrete, the wet thud of impact, a man begging, then silence. "You can open them now," Antonio said. Sophia opened her eyes. Luca's 4 men were down, not dead. Antonio's people had been surgical, wounding, disarming, neutralizing. Luca himself was on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, and Carlo stood frozen, gun in hand but not raised, staring at Antonio as if seeing a ghost. "Boss," Carlo began, "I can explain." Antonio shot him, not in the head, but in the knee. Carlo collapsed, screaming, clutching his shattered leg. "You can explain," Antonio's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. Please explain how you sold out your family. Explain how you kidnapped someone under my protection. Explain how you thought you'd survive this. Antonio, please. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Antonio walked to Sophia, pulled a knife, and cut her zip ties. His hands were gentle, inspecting her bruised face and her wrists where the plastic had cut into her skin. Did Carlo do this? Sophia nodded. Antonio's jaw tightened. He turned back to Carlo. 20 years, Antonio said. I've known you for 20 years. Your father saved my life. I made you underboss because I trusted you, and you sold me out for what? A promise from Luca Bernardi. He offered you nothing, because Luca doesn't honor deals with traitors. Antonio looked at Luca. Do you? Luca, still on his knees, said nothing. That's what I thought. Antonio turned back to Carlo. You want to know the funny thing? I was going to step back eventually. Let younger blood take over. You could have had it all. You just had to be patient. I didn't know. No, you didn't think. You just wanted. Antonio raised his gun. Goodbye, Carlo. Wait, please. I'm family. Not anymore. The shot echoed through the warehouse. Carlo slumped forward, dead before he hit the ground. Sophia looked away, her stomach churning. She had wanted to be saved, but she hadn't expected this. The cold finality, the execution. Antonio holstered his gun and walked to Luca. You want a war? You threaten my people? You try to use her against me. Antonio crouched down. Let me tell you how this ends. He pulled out his phone, showing Luca the screen. That's you threatening Sophia, ordering your men to hurt her if she didn't cooperate. Antonio smiled. All on video, beautiful quality too. I have excellent security equipment. Luca's face went pale. You're going to leak that? Not just leak. I'm going to send it to every news outlet in New York, every blog, every social media account that's been following the mob boss and his waitress story. Antonio stood. And you know what people will see? A girl who hugged me at a charity gala, and a rival who kidnapped her, threatened her, tried to use her as a weapon. Luca's expression twisted with understanding and rage. The hug made me look soft, Antonio continued. Weak, everyone thought I'd lost my edge. But this, he gestured to the phone, this scenario shapes my image as a protective, almost paternal figure, a man shielding the vulnerable from genuine threats. The public I know embraces such narratives. The heartfelt mob boss, the formidable man who rescued a waitress. The revelation was impactful, like a sudden blow. You're going to weaponize it? Luca gasped. The very thing we ridiculed you for, you're transforming it into PR, into influence. Antonio clarified. By tomorrow, I won't be perceived as the gentle boss who received a hug. I'll be the hero who saved a woman from kidnappers. My reputation will shift from dangerous to dangerous, yet principled. And you're the villain who menaced an innocent woman. He leaned in closely. The families who were testing me will now reconsider, because I'm no longer merely feared, I'm liked. And that, Luca, is infinitely more perilous. Antonio straightened. Rossi, release him. Rossi severed Luca's zip ties. The older man rose unsteadily. Relay to the other families what transpired here tonight, Antonio commanded. Inform them that Carlos is deceased. Tell them the fate of those who dare touch what belongs to me. And inform them that if anyone else wishes to challenge me, I'll gladly furnish additional material for the news cycle. Luca stumbled towards the exit, supported by his men. At the threshold, he turned back. This isn't finished. Indeed, Antonio stated calmly. It is. You simply aren't aware of it yet. Luca departed, his wounded subordinates limping behind him. The warehouse fell into silence, broken only by Sophia's ragged breathing. Antonio returned to her side. Can you walk? I believe so. He assisted her to her feet. She swayed, and he steadied her, his arm encircling her waist. Thank you, she whispered. I'm sorry I wasn't quicker. You arrived. That's what matters. They stepped out into the night air. Sophia glanced back at the warehouse, at Carlos's body, at the blood and violence that had become her grim reality. Are you truly going to release the video? She inquired. Already done. Sent it from the car on the way here. Antonio's smile was frigid. By morning, you won't be seen as the woman who embraced a mobster. You'll be the victim who survived a kidnapping, and I'll be the man who rescued you. That's manipulation? That's chess. He opened the car door for her. The hug was an accident that made me appear weak, but I've just transformed it into the most effective PR move I've ever made. Now, everyone who mocked me will look foolish for laughing while you were in danger. Sophia slid into the car. You're terrifying when you're clever. I'm always clever. I'm just usually less imaginative about it. As they drove away, Sophia's phone, retrieved from Carlos's pocket, began vibrating incessantly. Notifications, hundreds of them. The video had gone viral. Save Sophia was trending. The narrative had completely shifted. Antonio Russo, the man everyone believed had softened due to a simple embrace, had just demonstrated he was more formidable than ever. 6 weeks later, the world had a different complexion. Sophia stood in the foundation office, reviewing a grant application for an after-school reading program in the Bronx. The office was bright, modern, populated by earnest young individuals who genuinely believed they could transform the world through literacy initiatives and scholarships. Perhaps they were right, perhaps they were naive. Sophia was still deciphering which. "Miss Castellano," a voice interjected as a head poked in. "Mr. Russo is also online." Sophia answered the call. "Let me guess," she began. "You want me at another charity gala." "Good afternoon to you too," Antonio's voice, laced with amusement, responded. "And yes, a children's hospital benefit. Friday night. Your presence is requested." "Required, you mean?" "Strongly requested." Sophia smiled despite herself. "Fine, but I'm not wearing anything that costs more than my old rent. I'll inform the stylist to keep it reasonable." "You're impossible." "So I've been told." She ended the call, shaking her head. 6 weeks had passed since the kidnapping, and life had settled into something resembling normalcy. Almost. The video had irrevocably altered everything, just as Antonio had predicted. The narrative had shifted overnight from mob boss gets soft to mob boss protects innocent woman from rival. Think pieces appeared, profiles in magazines. A documentary crew had even approached the foundation, though Antonio had politely declined. His reputation had evolved, not softened. He remained dangerous, still feared. But now he was dangerous with a human dimension. The boss who had rescued Sophia, the man who proved you could be ruthless and principled. Rivals who had ridiculed him fell silent. Some even reached out to renegotiate territories, suddenly eager to avert confrontation. Luca Bernardi, for instance, had lost 3 major contracts after the video went public. No one wanted to associate with the man who had threatened a waitress on camera. Antonio had ingeniously transformed a perceived weakness into a powerful weapon. And Sophia, she was still here, still working, still herself. "Hey, Sophia," Marcus, one of the foundation coordinators, waved a folder. "The Brooklyn Library approved our proposal. They want to meet next week." "That's excellent. Schedule it. Do you want to bring Mr. Russo? He usually finalizes these deals." Sophia pondered. "No, I'll handle it. He pays me to do a job. I should actually do it." Marcus grinned. "You're the only person in this building who talks about the boss as if he's normal. That's because treating him like he's normal is the only thing preserving my sanity." That evening, Sophia returned to the penthouse. Her penthouse now, as Antonio had quietly transferred the deed into her name 2 weeks prior. "So, you always have a place to go," he had remarked, as if gifting multi-million-dollar Manhattan real estate was an everyday occurrence. She found him in the study, reviewing contracts. He looked tired, a good kind of tired, the kind that stemmed from honest work rather than violence. "You look like you need coffee," Sophia said, entering without knocking. She had stopped knocking after her first week back. "I need sleep, but coffee is a close second." She sat across from him. "Marcus says the Brooklyn Library deal is solid. I'm meeting them next week." "Good. You're better at the outreach aspects than I am anyway. I tend to intimidate people." "You intimidate everyone." "Not you, not anymore." Sophia met his gaze. He was right. Somewhere between the hug, the kidnapping, and the 6 subsequent weeks, fear had transmuted into something far more intricate. Trust. Perhaps friendship. Perhaps something neither of them wished to name just yet. "You're staring," she observed. "So are you." They held the gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Sophia broke first, standing. "I should let you work." "Sophia," he said, Thank you for staying. For not fleeing when you had the opportunity. Where would I go? You gave me the penthouse. You know what I mean. She did. After the rescue, after Carlos, after everything, Antonio had offered her an escape. Money, a new identity, a clean slate anywhere in the world. She had declined. Not because she was compelled to stay, but because she wanted to. That realization still unsettled her. Good night, Antonio. Good night. Later, alone in his room, Antonio stood before the mirror. He appeared the same as he had 2 months ago. The same face, the same suit, the same expression that had instilled fear in men for a decade. But something had fundamentally shifted within him. He touched his chest, precisely where Sophia had embraced him that night at the gala, the spot that had initiated everything. People still feared him, perhaps even more now than before, because he had demonstrated that fear and humanity were not opposing forces. He could protect what he cherished and annihilate what threatened it. The world had witnessed both facets. Rivals now thought twice before challenging him, not because he had softened, but because they had come to understand that soft was never the correct descriptor. Strategic, calculated, human. Those were the accurate terms. His phone vibrated, a text from Sophia. Stop working and go to bed. You look like death. He smiled, a genuine smile, not the cold, calculated expression he employed in negotiations, a real one. When had that begun to happen? Another text arrived. And yes, I can tell you're still working even though I can't see you. I just know because you're you. Good night, Antonio. He set the phone down and gazed at his reflection again. He touched that spot on his chest one last time. One impulsive hug. One fleeting moment of human connection from a terrified waitress who knew no better than to touch him. That's all it had taken to crack the armor he had meticulously constructed over 10 years. And now he possessed something he hadn't had in a decade. Something more valuable than fear or power or territory. He had someone who saw him as human and chose to remain anyway. The myth had transformed, not weakened. It had evolved. He was still Antonio Russo, still dangerous, still in control. But now, when he looked in the mirror, he saw something he had forgotten existed. He saw the man he might have become had life taken a different path. And for the first time in 10 years, that didn't feel like weakness. It felt like possibility. In her wing, Sophia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, contemplating when staying, had ceased feeling like surrender, and begun feeling like a choice. Wondering when Antonio Russo had stopped being the dangerous man who had ruined her life and started being something entirely different. Wondering what would happen next. The answer, she suspected, would terrify and exhilarate her in equal measure. But for now, in this precise moment, she was safe. She was herself, and she was exactly where she had chosen to be. Everything else could wait until morning.